Inn in the Savannah area, where a solo VP Harris rally will take place on Thursday. Joe Biden won Georgia by fewer than 12,000 votes over Trump in 2020, becoming the first Democrat to carry the longtime GOP stronghold in nearly 3 decades. Now it's up to Harris to prove whether that was a fluke or whether Democrats can keep the state in the blue column. Vice President Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, will participate in a sit-down interview with CNN's Dana Bash on Thursday. The broadcast will mark the first joint interview with Harris and Walz since he joined the campaign, and the first time Harris has sat down for an in-depth, on-the-record conversation since Joe Biden dropped out of the race. And Arlington National Cemetery is acknowledging that there was an unspecified incident during Donald Trump's visit on Monday on the 3rd anniversary of the Afghanistan withdrawal. There are dueling allegations of misbehavior, and those allegations have overshadowed an event that was meant to honor Americans, veterans who died in that altercation. There is reports by NPR that a Trump campaign staff pushed and verbally attacked a cemetery official who tried to stop them from taking photos and video in an area of the cemetery called Section 60, where many U.S. service members who died in recent conflicts are buried. And the Supreme Court today temporarily blocked a new effort by President Biden to wipe out tens and perhaps hundreds of billions of dollars of student debt. The plan was a part of the president's approach to forgiving student loan debt after the Supreme Court rejected a more ambitious proposal last year that would have canceled more than $400 billion in loans. And 6 decades ago, an estimated 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in the nation's capital. Martin Luther King's Jr. I Have a Dream speech that day on August 28, 1963, has since emerged as a paramount symbol of the push for racial and social equality. Tens of thousands of people gathered on Saturday in that same spot to declare that King's dream was in jeopardy and that America had slid backwards in its fight against hatred and bigotry. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinion. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go deep, where we dig behind the headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, today is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And we're going to be talking about what it means some 60 years later for civil rights activists and those who have been very engaged in social justice movement over the last 6 decades. Some folks say the dream that Dr. King talked about during that his historic speech is slipping away, that attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion make it very difficult to achieve some of the goals and the outcomes that Dr. King talked about when he talked about equality, when he talked about economic equality, when he talked about jobs and freedom, Black liberation. A political scientist, Professor Christine Slaughter from Boston University, is going to join us in the first hour. And second part of the show, we're going to talk to Greg Reed. He is an executive at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And unlike organizations like Lowe's and other big companies who are cutting their DEI programs, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is looking for ways to increase its diversity, its being more inclusive, having a workplace that includes more women, more people of color. So in this hour, we're going all in on the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom and the attacks on DEI and how some organizations are fighting back and standing up for diversity. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Don't settle for bumps, ingrowns, and itch due to dry skin. Try Venus for pubic hair and skin, the razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area, featuring a razor with patented irritation defense bar and skincare regimen that is dermatologist and gynecologist tested. Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Discover the full regimen of products at GilletteVenus.com.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit LAFLA.org. LAFLA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We're back, and Professor Christine Slaughter is joining me. She is a political scientist at Boston University. Her research really examines African-American politics with a focus on how economic inequality, gender, and psychological resources such as resilience influence the frequency and substance of African-American political engagement and behavior. Welcome to the show, Professor Slaughter, and thank you so much for joining me on this 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. So much has changed. Some folks believing that the dream, the goals, the aspirations of Dr. King that were articulated during that famous "I Have a Dream" speech on that day have slipped away or are slipping away. Talk to us about what that day meant in terms of, U.S. history and definitely in terms of Black history, and then we can talk some about where we are today.
For sure. So first, thank you, Areva, for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure to be here. When we think about the 60 plus years since the March on Washington, I think it's really important to consider how a lot of the things that were called for by Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph in terms of economic justice and freedom, we're still fighting for today. So then the Black unemployment rate was nearly double that for the white unemployment rate. And today we still face similar numbers in terms of Black unemployment. Also, the march was put on to pressure Johnson for legislation for African-American civil rights. And indeed, it did lead to the passage of the Civil Rights Act and also the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. And I'm sure many of your listeners know that we still today do not have a fully executed Voting Rights Act after the Shelby decision in 2013, which gutted a key provision of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So much of the progress that we saw that organizers and the Big Six organizations called for in 1963, we are still fighting for today. But I think that goes to what MLK said in his speech. He has a dream, but it was only the beginning in terms of where Black organizing and power would go in terms of changing this nation to live up to her ideals.
When we look at what a lot of big companies have been doing, when we look at what's been happening at universities across this country over this past year in particular. And these efforts, folks like Bill Ackman and others who say they are on a mission to basically eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion. And well, let me ask you this: is diversity, equity, and inclusion, the whole concept that we see utilized, the strategy utilized by some companies, is that an outgrowth of the dream that Dr. King talked about in 1963?
So that's a great question. I think that's one thing that's taken out of context a lot. So even if we think about the most recent decision on affirmative action, MLK said he wants folks to be judged not by the color of our skin, but the content of our character. But unfortunately, with systemic injustices, which makes it so that race, ethnicity, and also class differences shape who has access to, higher education and institutions of higher learning. Diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives should kind of offset some of those systemic wrongs and injustices that we see. So unfortunately, it's not the direct outgrowth of his dream if we don't interpret his words with the clarity and precision that he intended, not just to say we live in a colorblind society, but to say that we account for things such as equity in terms of how class differences and lower socioeconomic status has impacted certain groups. And this goes back to in the 1960s and going back to the 1940s, African Americans are left out of a lot of the programs in the Great Society. African Americans are disadvantaged systemically in terms of receiving benefits from the federal government. So we can't necessarily judge everyone by the color of their skin exclusively if we don't take into account how the federal government has, led to some of the racial disparities that we see today.
But would you agree, though, that the DEI programs that many institutions, public and private, have instituted are all designed to try to, realize Dr. King's dream of racial and social equality?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The goal of these programs is to make these institutions more diverse, to look more like America does. But unfortunately, I just want to say that those programs often don't go far enough to remedy some of the societal ills that we see. But of course, they are outgrowth of his vision for a society where we all are viewed as equal.
So if you look at the attacks that we're seeing now on these programs, both, again, in public institutions as well as private institutions, how do we achieve the racial and social equality that was talked about by Dr. King in that I Have a Dream speech, if in this moment we're saying one part of that effort by making a workplace more diverse, more inclusive, more equitable, that we no longer need that these programs, we hear many people saying these programs are divisive. And we even saw the big human resources organization, SHRM, say we're going to even take out the equity in our DEI because they said nobody understood. The president, Johnny Taylor, said nobody understands what equity means. And it's a divisive concept.
So I guess I have a long answer to this, but we have to start with education around what are these programs set to remedy in the first place. If we don't understand inequities between African Americans, Blacks, Latinos, Asians, and whites, if we don't understand the roots of those inequities, then of course, when we go to say, what causes them, we say, oh, well, it's not the admissions process. So I guess first is just some clarity around, well, why do we see the racial wealth gap emerge between Black and whites? Why do we see education gaps? Why are Black students not admitted to universities at the rates that they should be? Most public segregation of public schools ended in, formally in 1954, but still today, if we look across some states up in the Deep South, there's racial segregation. So it goes back to the root causes. Where do we see these differences emerge? And I think that gives us the clarity to say, look, what are these programs set to remedy? If we don't have a clear understanding of those differences, then of course we're not going to see the solution we're not going to see the same solution.
Well, is it a question of clear understanding or agreement about the problem? Because I do suspect that many of the people who are attacking these DEI programs, educated people, scholars, people with advanced degrees, they understand and know what the data says. They know the inequities in our system, but they have decided that, it's a zero-sum game, and that if Black folks advance, that means they're doing so at the expense of some other group. And they see it. If you get something, it must mean because you've taken away something from me, rather than seeing, an expanding pie. So is it education or is it will?
It's education. It's critical education about race and the understanding of how racial injustices emerge within this country. So it's, yes, like we need courses that kind of go into African American studies that are taught broadly. So if we think about the efforts to undermine African American studies across the South, and recently what happened in Florida, they are removing those courses. In South Carolina, I believe it got overturned in Georgia. So like, yes, it's, education, degrees, and pedigree, but also what's the content of the messages that students are receiving at elite universities. If I attend a university and I'm not told the history of how it's easier for me to arrive at this institution, then perhaps I'm missing a critical message about privilege and status within America. So that's one important thing, is kind of having those recurrent messages, not just about the pedigree of what we're learning, but also hearing about racial injustices from an early age.
Right, but I guess my point is there are people that are taught that they've been in universities, elite or not elite, and they have a clear understanding of the history of chattel slavery. They understand, Reconstruction, the Jim Crow era. They understand all of that, but they still profess that Black folks, one, don't need those programs, and then they take it even further. Not only do we not need these programs, they say these programs in and of themselves are divisive. These programs are discriminating against. That's what we've seen, a barrage of lawsuits filed recently saying that these programs in and of themselves discriminate against white people. We've seen certain advocacy groups use the 14th Amendment and other amendments and federal statutes that were designed to eliminate inequities and discrimination on the basis of race being used to suggest that white people are somehow being disadvantaged because there is, perhaps, affirmative action in college admissions. Right.
And I guess, bringing it back to MLK, I think one important thing to think about during the 60s and the 1950s and during the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King Jr. was not a popular figure. When we look at polling of MLK, he was very unpopular, among African Americans, but mostly among white Americans as well. So when we think about, again, it's not what people learn. If you poll, white Americans today, Martin Luther King is like the most popular civil rights figure, to exist. But if we look back in time, if we go back to, at the height of the civil rights movement, a very unpopular figure. So I hear what you're saying. Like, yes, it is, we have the same education. We choose to do different things with it. But banning it at the level that it's being banned in this state will disadvantage not just those that want to see racial disparities eliminate, but also those who, don't think they exist in the first place because they're not getting the information. So to bring it back around, I think what's important to note is that we must still continue to press on to teach this information, not just to students who want to know about racial issues, but those who are against it. Maybe one day they come around. If we use the civil rights movement and public opinion as a guide, then perhaps that's what we'll see.
And so as a historian, as a political scientist, walk us through what happened to King's legacy, because as you said, he was not popular. So when he's giving these speeches, when he's out fighting for jobs, fighting for Black liberation, there were even Black people who said he was too radical, that he was moving too quickly, that he was a disruptor, that he was a chaos agent. What allowed King to become this, iconic civil rights leader that if you don't know any other civil rights person's name, right? Everybody, Black, white, red, green, you're going to know Dr. King's name.
We're going to know Dr. King, Rosa Parks for her move as well. And maybe Coretta Scott King, if we're a little progressive and consider his wife in her statute as an activist as well. What has changed? So it's important to remember with the civil rights movement, it was a movement of nonviolent protest. And what we see with nonviolence, that was able to win over many white supporters, but also Black supporters as well, to see that the advent of the media, many protests, including Bloody Sunday being publicized nationally, folks to see that African American activists were asking for dignity and doing so without violence. And that has been shown to sway white Americans' public opinion. That is, they became more favorable as the movement went on, seeing that the activists were being victimized and brutalized without fighting back themselves. So that's kind of the big picture. Here's what changed public opinion there. And also that gave King and other civil rights leaders, such as John Lewis, who was the leader of the SINC at the time, leaders in the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Congress on Racial Equality, other leaders access to the White House to be able to speak to representatives, seeing that their movement was gaining traction over time. So it was, again, the spirit of nonviolent protest is what led King into the White House, placed him in the Oval Office to negotiate with Lyndon B. Johnson, eventually getting us the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 5.
Also today, an article came out about the journalist William Bradford Huey, who wrote this dispositive Look magazine article about Emmett Till's abduction and his death, his murder. We're now learning on the anniversary of Emmett Till's death that this journalist purposely left out the names of perpetrators, individuals who were involved in that abduction and that death. And he did so according to some of these documents that have been released for financial gain. He was trying to sell the story. He's trying to make a movie. He's trying to do a lot. And the historians are saying, had he reported the story more accurately, there would have been other people held accountable. How does the legacy of Emmett Till play into, again, what we're seeing happening with regards to this attack on teaching Black history, the attack on critical race theory, the attack on DEI?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with the abduction and murder of Emmett Till, like you say, a lot would have been unknown, had his mother, not decided to show what they had done to her son's body, to display it, one, to have a public, the open casket of his at his funeral, but also to, place the image in Ebony magazine or Jet magazine, one of the mainstream legacy Black publications, so that the world could see. And I think when we think about the injustices that are continuing to happen, Emmett Till being murdered by mob violence, but now we, continue to see violence perpetrated that we're able to see now that we have in some states body cameras by police officers. As we think about the murder of Sonia Massey in her home, we're able to see that, and we're able to collectively consume the trauma that she experienced in her final moments. That does something to folks' understanding of the movement and what we're fighting against by seeing those images. Unfortunately, we should not have to consume them to be sympathetic to the case for Black dignity. Just wanted to place that there, but also just to note that it's important that folks do understand the severity of violence against Black people. So whether it's publicizing in mainstream Black publications such as Jet magazine, which publicized Emmett Till's murder, we also see, today avenues like social media propelling images of Black folks being murdered by the police.
Where do we go from here? We have people commemorated the March on Washington. Tens of thousands of people were in the Capitol. We have this critical election coming up. Race is very much a part of what we're seeing played out in this election. From your perspective as a political scientist, a historian, where do we go from here?
Yeah, important if we think about the March on Washington in 1963 and the crowd size, not just tens of thousands, over 250,000 African Americans and their allies from all over the South and major cities within the U.S. go to the national Capitol. We see, that enthusiasm today when we think about politics and folks, organizing outside of the political system for their rights. So I guess, where do we go? I think you mentioned earlier that it was a commemorative March on Washington recently to account for kind of the continued struggle. We continue to organize for Black rights outside of the electoral context, but also we bring that energy into electoral politics, which I think we've seen a bit of as well.
Yeah, obviously, so much history and so much has happened in this country in the last 60 years since that infamous March on Washington. Unfortunately, Donald Trump likes to say that he has crowd sizes at rallies that are bigger than that March on Washington. There's absolutely positively no evidence, no receipts to suggest that he's had a crowd size remotely close to that crowd that gathered on that day in August of to really express how urgent the need was for civil, for social justice and racial equality in this country. And obviously, the fight continues. Coretta Scott King, was regularly quoted as saying the fight for justice, is not won in any one generation, but it's a fight that we all have a responsibility to continue in each subsequent generation. And obviously, we are in that moment where we're being called upon to continue to fight for racial and social justice in this country. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining me and helping us give some perspective to this March on Washington some 60 years later. When we come forward, we're going to talk to an executive from a utility about how they are standing up and fighting back to attacks on DEI. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Former President Donald Trump says he's reached an agreement with Vice President Harris related to the September 10th debate in Pennsylvania. In a Truth Social post, Trump said the debate will be held on ABC News, and the rules will be the same as the debate between him and President Biden. The former president said it'll be a stand-up debate and they can't bring any notes. CNN reports that microphones will be muted when the other candidate speaks and there will be no studio audience. This comes as the Trump and Harris camps have been going back and forth over the rules for the planned debate. A Clark County judge in Nevada is delaying the trial of the man accused of orchestrating the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. On Tuesday, the trial of 61-year-old Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was rescheduled to next March. Davis's attorney requested the delay. He wants more time to file other documents in an effort to get the case dismissed. Shakur was shot to death near the Las Vegas Strip in September of 1996. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Over in Encino, 2 middle lanes are still blocked with an accident on the 101 South at White Oak Avenue, while stop traffic over 30 minutes from Topanga Canyon Boulevard. Gardina's brush fire has been extinguished on the 110 South of the 91, with a slight heavy delay that continues in recovery from El Segundo Boulevard. Making our way through East LA's 60 East at Atlantic Boulevard, watch for an accident on the right shoulder and heavy traffic under 10 minutes from Lorena Street. Also, stalls been cleared from the 405 North and West LA before Wilshire, with a slight delay in recovery over 20 minutes from Washington Culver Boulevard split.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Rams took a hardline stance with linebacker Ernest Jones, their leading tackler last season, and ended up trading him to the Tennessee Titans. The Rams got a 5th-round draft pick in return for Jones. Jones, a 3-year veteran, was trying to get a contract extension this summer. Rams management preferred to wait until after the season to discuss a new deal. Jones led the Rams last season with 145 tackles. He also had 4.5 sacks. The Chargers are making an early gamble by keeping only 2 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster, Justin Herbert and backup Easton Stick. The Chargers are hoping Herbert can stay healthy. Stick is beginning his 5th season with the Chargers, but he's appeared in only 6 games. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tavis is under attack. I can't get his radio station on my transistor. I'm getting the agent station that he's right around, but they're not letting KBLA 1580 come in. I'm not getting the black man. So let Tavis know he's under attack. Cyber attack, racist attack, fascist attack, but he's under attack. And they doing something to disrupt his radio station so they won't get the truth out to us.
Hey, it's Tavis. We appreciate all that love, let me tell you, because we may very well be under attack on all sides. Just because you don't believe in conspiracy theories don't mean they ain't after you. But in reality, sometimes stuff happens with the signal from the studio to the tower, which sends our programming to your car, home, office, or your transistor radio. But when you download the KBLA 1580 app, the sound is clear as a bell all day, all night, anywhere in the world. from Los Angeles to Lagos. So we love all of our listeners, no matter how you hear us. But when you download the KBLA 1580 app and hear that richness, you'll wonder why you didn't do it sooner. But don't take my word for it. Download the KBLA 1580 app right now. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I approve this message.
Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. By any other name, we demand environmental justice in 2024 and beyond. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Hey, checking in?
This is not just your flu shot appointment at Walgreens.
Yes.
This is getting your entire family vaccinated in one trip.
Hey, Mom?
And a snack on the way out. Get flu shots for everyone in your family, together. Schedule appointments online today. This is wellness made easy. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability and for ages 3+. State and health-related restrictions may apply.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. And now, during our biggest sale of the year, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Plus free home delivery on select smart beds when you add any base. Ends Labor Day. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada. Member.
We're back, and in this hour, we're joined by Greg Reed. He's a senior executive at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and he's been very involved with the climate change initiative and awareness campaign that's been hosted by KBLA Talk 1580. Greg helped organize the KBLA community cleanup in Compton, California for Earth Day. He was one of those folks out there rolling up his sleeves, cleaning up the earth, bringing out lots of volunteers to help engage in that project. And also, Greg is leading the charge of diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Thank you, Greg, so much for joining me in this hour.
Thank you, Areva, for having me with you today. It's really an honor to be live with you on broadcast and to be a partner with KBLA Talk Radio and the Climate Justice Campaign. It really is phenomenal work that Tavis Smiley and your entire team are doing to bring this important conversation of climate justice to our community and allowing for that information to really be a part of our everyday vernacular so that we all can know, what the impacts are that our communities face and what government is doing in order to respond to climate change and making sure that our communities aren't left behind in the process.
Yeah, climate justice, climate change, terms not typically talked about in a lot of African-American households, not because Black people don't care about the earth, but we had a conversation earlier. I was talking to the professor about education and how important education is. And depending on where you are, what part of the country you're in, depending on what school district you're in, your education around issues of the civil rights movement, civil rights leaders, and even things like climate justice can vary tremendously. What is it that you think is one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about the whole concept of climate justice?
That's a really good question. I think when we talk about climate, impacts and climate change, I think, maybe there are debates on both sides. Some feel that maybe it's fake. And so when you extend, like, for example, we have extreme heat and extreme weather patterns. Sometimes we're getting very torrential rains and flooding. And so some may feel like, well, it's just another rainy day. But with that, the justice piece of it may not often be thought of because we have communities who are experiencing more challenges with, extreme weather conditions than other parts of our very own city. And so I think maybe the misconception could be around, what those experiences and impacts are, and whether our communities are really facing much of that.
Do you know, Greg, and I don't know, maybe you don't, but I'm just curious if you do, how climate and the issue of climate, like you said, some people don't believe climate change is real. How did the issue of the climate, of the warming of the earth and, issues impacting, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, how did they become a part of these culture wars where you have people, divided along political lines on the issue of whether, there are changes to the climate that are happening that are real?
Right. Yeah. And so with that, I mean, certainly there are those political lines that often divide left, right. Often there's also issues of, cultural background and perhaps even race and ethnicity that come into play that tend to divide, one another from one part of, our very own diversity from another part of our same city. I think with, climate justice and climate impacts, recognizing that we all are in this together. And when you think about, just for example, just a handful of years ago, we were looking at extreme drought conditions. You may remember, we were looking at, significant water conservation measures that were being enacted by LA Department of Water and Power and many of the other water districts, not only in Los Angeles, but across the state. Mm-hmm. And so whether you're in Central Valley, Orange County, San Diego, which tend to be very conservative areas, or here in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, and other more progressive cities and jurisdictions, we all needed to cut back, on our usage of water, mm-hmm. right? And that was followed up by extreme, wet years and flooding. And so these various extremes, impact us all in the very same way. And we have to figure out how best to manage our limited resources of water supply for a very populous state like California, 40 million people. And what is this, like the 7th largest economy in the world?
Right.
So we are in this together for so many reasons. And that's not to mention, extreme heat and how that has a profound impact on the most vulnerable in our communities, such as our young, such as those who have health compromised conditions, such as our senior and our elderly. And so being able to make sure we're caring for, all of our communities, regardless mm-hmm. of political, affiliations or even ethnicities, we have limited resources. We need to manage them well. And we have impacts that really can impact our most vulnerable. And we need to care for our most vulnerable in very important ways.
So a little earlier in the conversation, we were talking about the 61st anniversary of the March on Washington and the attacks that we have seen recently on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the Department of Water and Power has been stepping up and trying to bring in more diverse candidates and promote diversity, equity, inclusion in its workplace, contrary to what we've seen from some other large organizations. Why is that so important to the LA Department of Water and Power?
Well, let me start by, acknowledging our mayor, Karen Bass, who really has been a champion of equity for the city of Los Angeles. And you see it, in a most profound way in the way she has championed the cause for our unhoused in the city of Los Angeles, mm-hmm. and really promoting the supportive resources and affordable and assisted housing that we need. But not stopping there, but also ensuring that we are doing everything we can as a city to uplift small business, recognizing that the city of Los Angeles has the majority of businesses in Los Angeles are small business. And the majority of jobs that are created here in the city are created by small business. We all are not going to be working for large corporations like Google and other big noteworthy companies. And so when you think about, the work of Karen Bass, our mayor, she really is lifting up our communities through the work that she's doing. So carry that over to LA Department of Water and Power. Yes, DEI is under attack nationwide. But in our company, we are leaning hard and heavily into equity. So when it comes to our services that we provide to our communities, we are doing everything we can to ensure that none of our communities are left behind in the important work that we're doing. And that includes access to high-paying jobs and career opportunities here at the department. Our goal is to make sure that our organization of nearly 12,000 people reflects the diversity of the city that we serve. And so that making sure that we have a strong representation of women in the workplace, including women serving in roles that may be considered non-traditional, such as in our skill craft arena, those operators, maintenance, line workers, carpenters. We have our doors wide open to ensure women have access to those very high-paying jobs. Not only that, we're looking at the broad spectrum of the employment opportunities that DWB has to offer, whether it's in the engineering ranks, the administrative, the technical, in the business areas and finance, to make sure that we are broad and inclusive in including a diverse workforce. And why is that important? We recognize that diversity is the strength of any successful organization. It brings together diversity of thought. It brings together diversity of perspective and experiences. It also brings together the diversity of how we might approach various problems and the way we engage the diversity of our customers and the communities that we serve. And so by having that diversity reflected in our organization, we are able to provide excellent customer service and excellent services to all of our communities as a result of that. Doesn't stop there with our workforce, because we also are leaning heavily in terms of diversity and equity for the contracts that we put out, and doing everything we can to attract diverse businesses to work with us and be a part of the important work that we are doing. In addition to, as we move forward with major initiatives that we're engaging our communities so they know what we're doing and have an opportunity to weigh in and participate on our very important initiatives as well.
When we come forward, more with Greg Reed, Department of Water and Power, right here in Los Angeles, California. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
A world premiere theatrical event under the stars. Memnon tells the tale of a powerful Ethiopian king who fights alongside Troy during the city's darkest hour. This epic Greek myth has been overlooked for over a millennium. Until now. Memnon is co-produced by the Classical Theater of Harlem. Thursdays through Saturdays this September at the Getty Villa Museum. Tickets are available now at getty.edu.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Hey, checking in?
This is not just your flu shot appointment at Walgreens.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is getting your entire family vaccinated in one trip.
Hey, Mom?
And a snack on the way out. Get flu shots for everyone in your family, together. Schedule appointments online today. This is wellness made easy. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability and for ages 3+. State and health-related restrictions may apply.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. And now, during our biggest sale of the year, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Plus free home delivery on select smart beds when you add any base. Ends Labor Day. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
We're back, and Greg Reed is here. He is an executive with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and the significance of it. While many companies and organizations are eliminating their diversity, equity, and inclusion officers and strategies, the DWP is leaning into diversity, is trying to increase the number of women in particular, but also people of color, diverse backgrounds, to add to its workforce. So, Greg, what is the outcome? What is the return on investment, I should say, because the DWP has made these investments into a more diverse workplace?
So I think your return on investment is higher customer satisfaction for seeing a workforce that cares for their well-being, and having a workforce that genuinely provides supportive resources in areas that they need and count upon. The return on investment also is a highly motivated workforce that sees itself within being reflected, in the various areas of the organization. And when we talk about various areas, not only horizontally, but vertically. And so just as a case in point, we have a very diverse executive team. Our newly appointed Chief Executive Officer, Janice Quinones, is a Latina, a woman of color. And so, providing that diversity at the very top of the organization sends a very strong message and a signal. In fact, we recently had additional appointments under Janice's leadership in the area of our Chief Administrative Officer and our newest executive, our Chief People Officer, both of whom are African-American executives who are new on the team. And when you look across DWP at the senior management team, it also reflects a strong diversity as well. And so all of that says that the return on investment is a workforce that's proud to serve the city of Los Angeles, and a highly motivated organization to provide excellent customer service.
And, when you think about what the DWP has done to embrace equity, what's been the response from staff, from your employees? I mean, because we know there's a lot of data out there that shows that employers, organizations that have more diverse workplaces have a greater return on their investment and have just what you described, a higher morale. People feel like they are part of something bigger. People feel like they have opportunities, like there's opportunities for growth. Have you seen that kind of attitude manifested in the workplace?
Well, I think we have seen that manifested in the workplace, and I'll highlight a few items to illustrate that. So we have employee resource groups here at LADWP, the Society of Women Engineers. We have a local chapter here at DWP. The National Society of Black Engineers. We have a local chapter here at DWP. The Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, again, a local chapter here at DWP. We also have a homegrown group called Aspire, which focuses on our Asian American Pacific Islander community and employees. We also have Pride, which supports our LGBTQ employees and communities. And we are in the makings of a new employee group called Valor to support our employees who have served in the military. And so with that, our groups have been able to do a number of things with the department and within the communities that we serve, providing opportunities to showcase cultural heritage, participating in various community events, such as the Martin Luther King Day Parade, such as the Golden Dragon Parade in Chinatown, and other similar cultural celebrations like the Pride Parade. We also have had opportunities to do recruitment into the department through these same organizations, being on the front lines, attracting the best and brightest to our department and showcasing their activities in our boardroom and getting the recognition from our board of commissioners in the boardroom. And so it has really been a boost to DWP's culture in terms of promoting equity and inclusion and building the morale that you're talking about. Now, that isn't to say that DWP is perfect and that there aren't those situations where employees still see concerns in their local workplaces. And I can tell you, I've received those kind of calls and have talked with employees who have experienced challenging work environments. But we also have an Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion who is here and we care. And so we are also providing supportive resources to help, our employees through those challenging circumstances and to help coordinate a response from the executive level.
Well, Greg, you just described a workplace that seems pretty attractive, pretty desirable. So I guess the logical question I have is, are there positions open? Is the DWP hiring?
Absolutely. DWP absolutely is hiring. We have our website, ladwp.com, and we have a career page on our website that showcases all of the job opportunities that are open to the public. Now, let me kind of explain that our hiring process can be quite lengthy and complicated because it is a public agency. Having said that, there are, I think it's in the area of about 150 job titles that are open to the public. And these different job titles will have city examinations that candidates can take to get on a hiring list. And when openings come up, interviews are done off of those hiring lists. The different positions open up for examination at different points, in the year. And so patience and persistence really matters. But I can tell you that it's worth it. I started my career with the city of Los Angeles way back in 1991. And let me tell you, at that time, I applied for the job called Office Engineering Technician. And the bulletin said high school diploma desired, not required. Guess what? I was eligible for that.
Wow.
So I applied, and it took a year, but I got my first interview after taking the city test. And next thing you know, I got a job offer. And ever since 1991, I've been with the city with a little break coming away from the city and returning again. But with that being said, it's been a beautiful experience working for the city. I'm a civil engineer by academic background, and I've been a water professional here at DWP since 2002. I happen to be serving now in the diversity, equity, and inclusion role, and it's been a really great career. And so with that being said, not only are the job opportunities that are listed on the webpage that you're showing right now as a great resource, we also have our labor union, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 18. They have a pathway program called the Utility Pre-Craft Training Program. And we also have the Utility Worker Program, and we also have the Office Trainee Program. Now, why are these important? First of all, working in a unionized workforce provides significant benefits, high-paying salaries, and also negotiated benefits and protections. And so it's really great to be a part of a unionized workforce. With that being said, the union provides these pathways for LA County residents to sign up with their interest. It is a first come, first served basis, but as openings come up and they bring in new training groups, then that's a pathway into full-time employment. Earn while you learn. And so you're getting training from the union, you're being placed into positions within the department, continuing that training, and it transitions into full-time employment. So those resources and job opportunities are available for LA County residents, and you go to the IBEW Local 18 website to sign up.
Thank you so much, Greg. We are out of time. Appreciate all the work you're doing, and obviously appreciate our great mayor, Karen Bass, for the city of Los Angeles. Keep embracing equity, diversity, and inclusion. So critically important. Again, thank you for your time today. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers in the Rao Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Also Brooks, who is black, and Republican Larry Hogan tied with 46% support. The poll of over 1,200 likely voters found that 7% are still undecided about who they will support. The poll also shows